Margaret of Anjou's life was shattered. Her husband, King Henry VI, had been captured. The Battle of Northampton had only lasted 30 minutes, a blink of an eye in history, but long enough to completely alter the trajectory of her family. They had been betrayed by the leader of one of the most important groups in the Lancastrian army, and now Margaret was in a desperate situation for survival with her 6-year-old son. That son, Edward, Prince of Wales, was the reason she was fighting so fiercely. By now, Margaret and Henry had been married for 15 years. He had already been captured once, and at one point he had even gone catatonic for 18 months. It was left to Margaret to hold up the Lancastrian cause. These were not the days when women led, or when men easily followed or allowed women to be in charge. She's been called a she-wolf. But she knew if she did nothing, it would be the end of the Lancastrian dynasty and quite possibly her young son's life. With the Yorkists closing in, Margaret fled with a small, terrified retinue and the weight of a crown that was slipping through her fingers. They raced towards the Welsh border, and the nightmare deepened. In the wild woods near Chester, she was ambushed not by Yorkist soldiers, but by those who should have protected her. Seeing a woman vulnerable and in retreat, they saw only profit. The chronicles tell us she was robbed of everything: her jewels, her horses, and her baggage. They even held a knife to her throat while she clung to her son, leaving her with nothing but her life and the 6-year-old boy she was determined to save. Margaret continued on to Wales, and eventually to safety here at Harlech Castle. A large portion of Wales was part of the Duchy of Lancaster, and her most reliable ally, Jasper Tudor, was there. Jasper had an immense power base in Wales, and because of that, there was a secure network for her flight. Harlech Castle offered a unique advantage for a lost cause: sea access. The castle is built on a rock that, at that time, met the water's edge. A protected staircase of over 100 stone steps led down the cliff to a private water gate. This allowed the garrison to receive supplies by boat. So even if Yorkist forces cut off the roads and surrounded the castle on land, the fortress could remain connected to allies in Scotland and France. By the time she got to these thick, formidable walls, news from London had already arrived. Her son, who was now 7, had been skipped in the line of succession. Parliament had passed the Act of Accord. Her husband would still hold the title of king while he remained alive, but the Duke of York would inherit the throne after that. Margaret and her son had been pushed aside. They would only stay at Harlech for a short time. Margaret knew she could not win from behind a wall. In late 1460, she left by sea, heading north to Scotland to raise an army. She had come this far. She was not going to give up. Behind her, the Lancastrian garrison at Harlech also refused to yield. For 7 years, while the rest of the kingdom fell under Yorkist rule, this rock remained a lonely outpost. The castle functioned as a vital intelligence hub, the one place on the map where Lancastrian agents could land safely to deliver letters and funds from the exiled queen. Because the terrain surrounding the castle was so treacherous, the Yorkist authorities struggled to maintain a steady watch on who was entering or leaving the gates. They could patrol the roads, but they could not easily police the jagged mountain passes or the shifting tides of the Irish Sea. As the years passed, the siege became a significant financial drain on now King Edward IV's finances. He was forced to issue repeated proclamations demanding the castle's surrender, even going so far as to declare the defenders traitors in an attempt to break their morale. Yet, the garrison remained unmoved. They relied on a secret network of local Welsh sympathizers who smuggled cattle and grain across the hills under the cover of night. Inside the walls, they utilized every inch of the inner ward to store these supplies and goods brought in through the water gate. The standoff eventually forced the Yorkists to change their strategy. For years, the siege had been a passive blockade, but by 1468, it had become an intolerable insult to the king's authority. The standoff eventually forced the Yorkists to change their strategy. For years, the siege had been a passive blockade, but by 1468, it had become an intolerable insult to the king's authority. Rather than attempting to storm the walls, which could have ended up being a massacre for the attackers, the Yorkists focused on a massive logistical effort to finally sever the castle's sea access. They commissioned ships to patrol the coast and stationed a force in the surrounding hills to intercept any movement on the narrow mountain paths. This was not a battle of swords, but a slow, calculated attempt to starve the defiance out of the men inside. Yet, even as the food ran low, the spirit of the garrison remained anchored in the iron will of their constable. It was commanded by a Welshman named Dafydd ap Ieuan, a veteran of the wars of the continent, who met the Yorkist threats with legendary defiance. He famously boasted that he had once held a castle in France until all of the women in Wales talked about it, and now he would hold Harlech until all the old women in France talked about him. By 1468, the isolation finally broke the resistance. After 7 years of holding the line, the men were forced to face the reality that they were standing alone in a kingdom that had moved on without them. The horizon remained empty, and with no rescue coming from the sea, the last pocket of defiance in the realm was finally extinguished. There were no other castles, cities, or outposts holding a banner for Henry VI. When Harlech fell, the first phase of the Wars of the Roses was over. The war would eventually restart, but the original Lancastrian resistance died here. Margaret of Anjou had sailed away to fight for her son's crown, but the shadow of her defiance stayed here, etched into the stones of Harlech Castle. Hi friends, this is Evelyn. I hope you enjoyed this video and got something from it. You help us to share history with classrooms, families that use these videos for homeschool, and you help people all over the world that watch both my live streams and my videos see historic sites and learn about the stories of our past. Be sure to click that subscribe button so that we can continue to make history and historic sites more accessible to those who might not be able to come to them otherwise. You can also become a member to my channel that I call the Castle Crew. With that, you get access to a book club, member-only lives, member-only videos, and so much more.